Art Carney got 6 Emmys for his role as Ed Norton. He won the Oscar instead of Al Pacino, but when his well-known Honeymooners co-star died in 1996, he didn't say a word. In Hollywood, everyone paid their respects. The family of Jackie Gleason sent flowers. Cast members who used to be on TV cried. It was quiet from Art Carney. In her autobiography, she wrote that he was smart and kind. She hoped they would talk again one day. They didn't. No one knew how bad what they did to each other was. He was born in Mount Vernon, New York, on November 4, 1918. In a very Irish Catholic family with 6 boys, he was the youngest. His dad worked for a newspaper. But the alcohol that ran through their house like water changed Art more. 3 of his older brothers drank too much. His dad also drank. You heard it right. Art once said, "Most of us boys didn't smoke, but we did drink." It was a message. As a teenager, he started drinking daily, not just sometimes or with friends. He thought drinking was normal as a child. He was going to fall into it, not if, but when. He was good early on, being Franklin D. Roosevelt was one of his best tricks. He didn't just sound like him. He was him, the tone, the voice, and the stop. People who were listening to the radio thought the president was talking. It became so strong that federal agents got involved. They were afraid it would make things harder during the war. Some foreign officials even thought that the speeches he was giving were real. It was risky, but it made him famous. After that, he used that voice on radio shows to sound like Roosevelt, Churchill, and Eisenhower, among others. Thanks to his bigger brother, Carney was already playing with the Horace Heights Orchestra by the time he was 18. It sounded very fancy. It wasn't. Fred Lowry, a blind whistler, lived with him. He also brought Art to drinking in the morning, but not coffee. Gin and orange juice every day. It felt like freedom at first. There are no rules and no blame, but that freedom turned into a cage very quickly. He had no idea that he was hooked. He had a clear memory of one event. During a live show, he was so drunk that he couldn't even spell the name of the sponsor, Tums. He spoke slowly and slurred his words. Sponsors were very angry. At age 23, he quit the band before they could fire him. The war then happened. August 15, 1944, was the 4th anniversary of his wedding. His job as a machine shooter was in France with the 28th Infantry Division. A German mortar went off close. The bullet went through his right leg. He hadn't even shot his gun yet. Thought it was funny that he had never fired a gun and might not have wanted to, but the hurt person wasn't joking. His left leg was 3/4 of an inch longer than his right. He always walked with a limp, 9 months of healing, 1 Purple Heart, and a guy who is deeply hurt. He had an award and scars on his body that no one could see when he got home. His limp was clear. It wasn't the pain. He drank more. He used barbaric words. He began taking amphetamines. For him, the war had only been over for 2 months, but the impacts would last forever. Occasionally, he lost it. He couldn't handle the stress. Back then, no one called it PTSD, but that's what it was. In 1965, he had a breakdown that made him quit the odd pair. He wouldn't get sober until almost 30 years after the war. Carney was on the radio all the time in the late 1940s. It was with Milton Berle, Fred Allen, and Maury Amsterdam that he worked. He always came through for the team, like the second banana. Any voice or joke would work for him. He drank more than ever when he was behind the mic, though. He slurred his words sometimes. He would sometimes pass out. They hired him again and again. Too few people had his skill. The producers didn't deal with his drinking. Instead, they worked around it. It was hard for him after the war. Could a man who limps do well on TV? He got it done. To keep his legs straight, he had shoes made just for him. He didn't just hide the limp, though. He made use of it. It was a part of his joke. He didn't just walk or dance in strange ways. They were staying alive. He used pain to make a show. His fans didn't know, they laughed, but the truth never left him. It got worse to drink. He was already on the edge with Horace Heights Band. Now he was drinking again, and this time it was worse. It wasn't his choice to leave the band when he was 23. He did it because he had to. he was bad for business. It was already too late for him to fix his problem. There would be many more. He did some stand-up. It did not work. It wasn't that he wasn't funny. It was that the stage scared him. The looks of the crowd, the silence, and the stress. It made him feel anxious. He drank to calm down, then he took some pills to get smarter. He had to take more pills just to sleep after that. He set up a bad situation. Repeat, fear, drugs, shame. The person who made radio stars shine couldn't handle being the center of attention himself. He was even haunted in his personal life. The two met in high school and fell in love. In 1940, they got married. They had 3 kids named Paul, Brian, and Eileen. But drug abuse caused the marriage to fall apart. Art Carney almost didn't make history on TV because he didn't think he belonged there. Back in 1951, radio writers asked Carney to be in a sketch with Jackie Gleason on Cavalcade of Stars. Carney thought it was a mistake. He was already becoming a big star. Carney didn't think that well-known person knew who he was. There was no fake humility. He had been taking the show as Newton the waiter on the My Amsterdam show without anyone noticing. But he still thought of himself as a small person. Everything that came after would be shaped by that way of thinking. There was a man whose skills could make a room full. Still, he had doubts about himself the whole time. That sketch became The Honeymooners, and everyone met Ed Norton. People knew him by his white t-shirt, open vest, and pork pie hat. It wasn't so easy behind the scenes, though. Carney strived for excellence. He thought it was important to practice every word, move, and beat. Hey Gleon, he wanted to be free. Too much practice, he thought, would make the magic less powerful. Carney would show up ready to work out. Gleon said no. That's why Carney built Norton's character by himself. He even wore special shoes to hide the fact that he walked with a limp because of an injury he got in battle. Carney was in charge of the silly moves and the timing. Practicing by themselves, pushed by stress, pain, and finally pills. Art Carney's life wasn't funny while he was making The Honeymooners. All 39 shows were filmed in real time in front of 1,000 people at the Adelphi Theater in Manhattan. That was enough to put pressure on it. But Jackie Gleason made things more difficult. He was known for changing lines right before the show started. He thought that practicing too much would take away from the joy. This meant that the actors often didn't know their lines when they first got on stage. It was hell for Carney. He was very picky about things. He needed to get ready. Instead, he would get fresh lines and stage directions right before going on stage in front of a real room full of people. The stress was too much to handle. The actors came up with secret visual cues to stay alive. When Gleon forgot a line, he would pat his stomach. When someone had to go to the fridge, Audrey Meadows would look at it. On screen, everything looked fine, but behind the scenes, Carney was barely able to keep it together. He drank and took pills to deal with things, anything to calm his mind down. In 1956, the end of the show seemed like a big blow. In the United States, the show went from being ranked number 2 to number 19. For Carney, though, it was a release. No more rewriting at the last minute, and no more panic attacks before live shows. His boss even said that Gleon has other plans for the future that don't include Carney. That also makes Carney happy. He was free at last, and he made the most of it. His first show on Broadway was The Rope Dancers in 1957. He was James Hyland, a broken and drunk father. It was put on 189 times and was nominated for 6 Tonys. He was praised by many. People said he was a master at mixing weakness, charm, and sadness. Not many people knew, though, that the part wasn't that hard. Carney was drinking a lot already. He had been for many years. Then came his most famous stage part. In 1965, Carney played Felix Anger for the first time in Neil Simon's The Odd Couple, which starred Walter Matthau. It worked out great. Matthau was a mess. Carney was right on. The show became a huge hit. The critics went crazy. In later years, Tony Randall played Felix on TV. He said that Carney's version was the first and best. Fitz was more than just a clean freak thanks to Carney. He made him real, complicated, funny, and weak. Even Jack Lemmon, who played Felix in the movie, had a hard time getting away from Carney's shade. His stage work was great, but his home life was falling apart. In 1965, his 25-year marriage was getting worse. There were 3 kids and a long past between him and Jean Mayers, but it couldn't last because of his drug use. In his teens, Carney began drinking. He was also hooked on barbiturates and amphetamines by the 1960s. He said that his old comic partner would have gin and grape fruit juice for breakfast one time. Over time, it got worse. Jean had helped him for years, but he started acting in strange and dangerous ways. She was fed up with it all. In the same year, the marriage ended, and then something even stranger took place. It was like Carney started to turn into Felix. He developed obsessive habits away from the stage. The most unsettling thing was how he stacked coins. It was a perfect sight to see him line up coins in his changing room by size, color, and value. He couldn't go on stage if even one was wrong. Coworkers began to notice. They said he missed signs and pushed back scenes because he couldn't stop setting things up. The person and the man became less clear, cut. Felix wasn't just a part anymore. It looked like a cage. With only 7 months on the show, Carney hit rock bottom in October 1965. He had a full mental and physical breakdown and went to a psychiatric hospital in Hartford to get help. He stayed there for almost 6 months. He told the truth about everything, the drinking, the drugs, and the breakdown. He told her my first marriage was ending and I wasn't in good shape. Art Carney had already shown what he could do on Broadway. He was great as Felix Anger in The Odd Couple. Critics and even Tony Randall, who later said Carney was the first and best Felix, gave him high marks. But something terrible happened when it was time to make the 1968 movie version. Pinewood picked Jack Lemmon instead. They said it was about making money at the box office, but Carney thought something different. He thought that his recent breakdown and the fact that he had admitted to being addicted to drugs made him too risky or even uninsurable for a big-budget movie. He never got rid of that thought. The movie made more than $44, $5 million, making it the 3rd most successful movie of that year. Seeing it succeed without him, there was not only upsetting, it scared him, but there were signs that things were getting worse before Hollywood turned its back on him. Strange things began to be seen by friends and co-workers. When Carney was stressed, he behaved like Felix Anger when he wasn't on stage. His loose change would be neatly stacked on the vanity table, with the smallest coins at the top and the biggest coins at the bottom. It wasn't just strange, it was crazy. The folks around him knew what it meant. He was going down again. They could see what was going on. He was getting more and more close to another breakdown the more he behaved like Felix. It became impossible to tell the difference between Carney and Felix over time. In 1966, Jackie Gleason called Art Carney on the phone. There was no sign of Carney in public because he was depressed and abusing drugs. However, Gleason wanted Ed Norton to come back, and Carney had always been that person. Carney came back against all odds. They did something magical when the revival of the Honeymooners played on the Jackie Gleason show. Fans turned on. Norton's strange moves, clumsy dancing, and loyal charm were all back, and they were even better than before. No one thought Carney would be as good as he was. It was 1966 when he won his 4th awards. Then he had his 5th in 1967, then a 6th in 1968. 3 years, 3 Emmys, and he was barely able to keep it together. Music was added to the show for the first time. He danced, sang, and made people laugh like nothing was wrong. But later, he told someone something scary in private. At that time, playing Ed Norton not only saved his job, it also saved his life. The role gave him a reason to live when everything else was going wrong. The show's bright lights couldn't hide what was going on behind the scenes, though. Carney quit taking drugs after his time in the mental hospital, but alcohol still held him back. The results were terrible from 1966 to 1970. His look changed quickly. At 48, he looked a lot older than that. His face got bigger. His hands were shaking. He moved more slowly. Making up couldn't cover up the damage. It took more and more time to get him ready for each scene. Some people think that Carney drank about a fifth of a bottle of whiskey every day. That doesn't count the beer and wine at dinner or in between takes. In a few weeks, his weight would change by 30 pounds either way. He sometimes couldn't remember anything about practice. His co-star Joyce Randolph once found him unconscious in his changing room. The crew knew how to handle these kinds of problems in a quiet way to keep the show's good name. But Carney was falling apart on the inside. Carney did something that most actors in his situation wouldn't even think about after the 1969 season ended. He went back to the same brain hospital in Hartford and checked himself in. There was no incident, arrest, or help. He just made a quiet, planned move because he knew he was in trouble. He was still the best because he had just won another Emmy. He drank more than ever, though. This second stay was for about 4 months. It wasn't just rest, he was working too. He spent a lot of time in therapy. During his time in group meetings, he helped shape the way Alcoholics Anonymous does things today. He wrote in diaries. He was just as careful with his own thoughts as he was with Norton's. He joked that his family's history of drinking was an Irish curse. It wasn't exciting, it was planned out. Even though he didn't stop drinking right away, what he learned in that hospital would help him quit for good in 1974, when he was shooting Harry and Tanto. Even as he got better, he never went back to that thing. This is the Honeymooners. Carney didn't go to any of the events that Gleon and Audrey Meadows went to, but they stayed in touch. There are no interviews, comments, or nods to the past. Carney didn't say anything in public when Meadows died in 1996. Some people called him cold for that, but people who knew him knew it wasn't because he didn't care. It was about getting through. Too much pain was connected to that part of his life. Audrey Meadows wrote a biography in 1994 called Love, Alice. In it, she called Carney smart and kind, but she also said that they were never close. She thought he felt bad about something, but she wasn't sure what. One time, she thought that he might have blamed himself for something during those hard years of shooting. That's not what she said. It was sad and soft. She even thought about getting in touch later on, but she didn't. She said that Art had moved on from that part of his life, but getting his domestic life back on track was harder. He thought he was getting a second chance in 1966. He married Barbara Isaac a year after getting out of the hospital and divorced his first wife, Jean Mayers. She wasn't just anyone. She knew how hard it was because she worked behind the scenes in TV. Carney thought she could make him stay steady. That looked like it was true for a while. He stopped taking pills. He quit taking amphetamines. His life looked like it was getting better, but he was still drunk. By 1977, the second marriage was over. It wasn't just another split up. It was the last crack in a life that was already broken. The man was in his late 50s. Most men his age were planning to take it easy and enjoy retirement, but he was falling apart. Barbara, who had been there for him since the early 1960s, finally gave up. She had worked on shows like the Art Carney special and thought he was talented, but she could no longer handle the rounds, the vows, the drinking, and the slip-ups. Their relationship had been through one rough patch in 1965. It couldn't handle another 10 years of getting worse. Carney became very lonely after she left. Friends said that he would spend the whole weekend in his apartment, which was full of empty pill boxes and bottles. He didn't talk to many people. He would talk to himself in the mirror sometimes. It was a scary picture. This was the same person who made people laugh as Ed Norton. He was now all by himself. Even his kids from his first marriage turned away. They didn't know how to talk to the new man he had turned into. A strange offer was made by Paul Mazursky to Art Carney to act in Harry and Tanto. The offer even seemed like a joke. Carney had spent his whole life on TV making people laugh. He had never been on a cross-country trip with a cat for an independent movie that barely had a $1 million budget. He had only been in 2 movies before, and neither of them stood out. He was now 54 years old and had to play a weak 72-year-old man. He said no more than once because the script was a dull trip story. He was too young, he said, but he was really old because he had been drinking a lot for years. He was gray and bald, and he walked funny because of a war injury. He looked a lot older than he was. It wasn't easy for Mazurki. He thought Carney was interesting. Some didn't. Pain, being alone, and being strong in the quiet. The person was named Carney. It took a hard push from Bill McAfry, who has been his agent for a long time, to get through. "Do it, you're old," that hurt a lot. It was true, but it was mean. Carney was aware of this. But just when it looked like he had his big chance, almost everything went wrong. Cagney had to carry his cat Hanto up several flights of stairs in one scene. His heart stopped beating quickly, and he knelt down and started throwing up something dark and grainy. Everyone went cold. Blood was there, even though it looked like coffee grounds, blood that was digested from abdominal bleeding. A collapsed diaphragm was the result of years of drinking too much, and the physical stress had set off something very bad. He was taken to a Los Angeles hospital right away. He was told by doctors, "Keep drinking, and you'll be dead in 6 months." No one outside of the set knew what happened. But Carney came back in just 3 days, and he looked like a ghost, pale, weak, and shaking. Scenes had to be rewritten so that they were easier on the bodies. However, Carney did not stop. When he was almost killed, he had to do something very dangerous. Antibus, it was a very bad drug. It would make him very sick if he drank even a little alcohol. His heart was beating fast. He could throw up for hours. He did need something that strong, though. He threw away all of his bottles. He stopped going to restaurants, bars, and even friends who drank with them. He knew he couldn't give in, so he would stand outside booze stores and stare for hours. He used antibuse as a cover. He didn't waste the best chance of his career because of it. Then the unthinkable took place. It was Art Carney who won Best Acting at the 1975 Academy Awards. Not even he thought it would happen. Famous people like Jack Nicholson for Chinatown, Al Pacino for The Godfather Part 2, Dustin Hoffman for Lenny, and Albert Finney for Murder on the Orient Express are also up for awards. Since Nicholson was clearly the favorite, most of them didn't even show up. People in the room gasped when Glenda Jackson read Carney's name. Some people were shocked. A man with just 2 small movie credits beat 4 big names. It helped, but it didn't take away the pain. Carney still had deep wounds. Years ago, he wasn't chosen for the movie version of The Odd Couple, even though he was a big star on Broadway as Felix Anger. Instead, Jack Lemmon was picked. Carney always thought that his drinking and mental breakdown hurt his chances of getting the part. It scared him. He still had stress and guilt even after winning the Oscar. Some of his strange habits that his friends noticed were the way he would stack coins in exact order. There are big ones at the bottom and small ones at the top. There were little clues that he wasn't completely fine. He got a second chance with the award, but it didn't fix what was wrong. After his first wife, Jean Mayers, died in 1980, Carney married someone else, which shocked everyone. They had been split up for 15 years. They were married for 25 years the first time and had 3 children. This is Eileen, Brian, and Paul. But drug abuse had ruined it. Carney had gone to a mental hospital in the middle of the 1960s. He got married again after the split, but it didn't last. He and Jean kept in touch for the kids, though. Art Carney was famous, but he never really liked being the center of attention. In the 1950s, the lovers made him famous, but he left that fame and never looked back. In the 1970s and 1980s, when TV started showing reunion shows, Carney was the big name that wasn't there. It had Jackie Gleason there. It was Audrey Meadows there, but Carney did not agree. He always said no. He could have made a lot of money, but he didn't want to. He would say things like, "It was a great time, but it was only a time. I don't live in the past," when asked why. His friends and family said it wasn't about money or pride. He didn't want to be Ed Norton ever again, not even for one night. In 1957, Carney's boss told him that he was ready to fly by himself, but it turned into something more over time. Sometimes things end, and you don't know the chapter is over until you look back and see that no one turned the page. Carney said he thought of the Honeymooners as a finished book in this way. The next thing was even harder to explain. Ava Meadows passed away on February 3, 1996, from lung cancer. She was 73 years old. The showbiz world responded right away. There were a lot of tributes. Everybody spoke up. All of them except Art Carney. Not a single sentence or quote. Fans were shocked. Even Gleon, who had died many years before in 1987, said nice things about his co-stars in his last talks. But Carney said nothing at all. People who knew Carney thought there was more to it than what was said. Some called it mean and cold. Meadows said in her last interview that she hoped they would talk again one day. She didn't believe they were angry at each other. She said that quiet can be louder than a fight, and maybe it was. She thought Carney was mad at himself for something, but she never really said what it was. That made her feel bad, that it hurt him to remember the old him. They might not have meant to reject you with their quiet. They might have been sorry. Carney stayed out of the public eye, even more after winning an Oscar for Harry and Tanto in 1975. He stopped drinking, went through antabus treatment, and moved away from Hollywood to live a quiet life. He was in a few more movies, like Firestarter and 1984's The Muppets Take Manhattan, but he never tried to become famous again. Last Action Hero, which came out in 1993, was his last movie. That was the last time people saw him on screen. His last line in the movie was, "I'm out of here." Carney didn't go to gatherings or retrospectives with other old stars. Interviews with him were not given. He wasn't trying to get a picture. He did not wish to be known as a star. He did not want to be with anyone. Jean was his first wife. After a split and a short second marriage, he married her again in 1979. The two of them lived together in Westbrook, Connecticut. He worked in the yard, read, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. His friends said he wasn't angry. He was finally calm, and it had taken decades to find that peace. In his sleep on November 9, 2003, 5 days after his 85th birthday, Art Carney passed away. No secrets or drama, just a peaceful end to a life that was once full of chaos. He hadn't used drugs or alcohol in almost 30 years. Antabus helped him stay on track so he never fell behind. His service was private, just like how he lived. He was laid to rest next to Gan in Riverside Cemetery in Old Saybrook. Gan would die in 2012. He ran for office, and now his grandson Devin Carney is in the Connecticut General Assembly. People in Art Carney's circle said he was okay with the couples getting married, but he never did it in public again. Family name lived on. He might not have told anyone, but the pain was gone. The evil spirits were gone. There was only one man left. He had finally found a way to be happy with himself and leave quietly as he had chosen.